Act 1. The Watchers of the Night Sky. For centuries, humanity looked to the heavens for answers. In the ancient lands of the East, where the rivers Tigris and Euphrates carved their paths through history, lived a group of extraordinary scholars. They were not sorcerers of dark magic, but scientists, astronomers, and seekers of ultimate truth. They spent their nights charting the movements of the stars from their high desert towers, searching for a divine cosmic tapestry that whispered the secrets of the Creator. On one particular night, a gentle wind blew through the ancient observatory, rustling parchment papers and catching the glint of brass astronomical instruments. An elderly scholar stood by a massive bronze astrolabe, peering into the dark blue horizon with weary awe. The planetary alignments danced in perfect harmony, yet the sky felt as though it was holding its breath, waiting for something monumental. Suddenly, the youngest of the astronomers called out in excitement, pointing toward the constellation of Judah. A light like none they had ever seen before had broken through the darkness. It did not flicker, and it did not fade. It burned with the intensity of a pure, white fire. The scholars rushed to the window, their eyes widening as the room filled with a soft, brilliant blue and white reflection. It was the Great Conjunction, a celestial event predicted in the ancient scrolls. They unrolled a weathered Hebrew parchment and read the prophetic words, "A star shall come out of Jacob, a scepter shall rise out of Israel." Another text whispered from the past, "Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising." The King of the Kings had been born, and the heavens were announcing his arrival into the world of men. They knew they could not simply sit and watch history from a distance. They had to follow the light. Though it meant a journey of hundreds of miles through treacherous deserts, lawless territories, and scorching heat, their entire lives had been preparation for this exact night. If the Creator of the universe had lit a beacon in the heavens, they were determined to follow it. They gathered their camels, packed their provisions, and departed before dawn. Act 2. The long and arduous journey. The epic pilgrimage began. Leaving behind the comfort of their palaces and libraries, the travelers stepped into the vast, unforgiving wilderness. Night after night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the mysterious star appeared, shining with an otherworldly brilliance, moving slowly as if beckoning them forward. The march was long and grueling. The heavy, rhythmic footsteps of camels on sand paired with the whistling of a harsh desert wind. Weeks passed, water skins ran low, and violent sandstorms threatened to wipe out their tracks. Yet, while other stars faded into the dawn, this celestial guide burned bright. When the terrain became too dangerous, the light seemed to guide them around treacherous canyons, protecting their path. They realized that faith was not the absence of hardship, but the willingness to keep walking because of who awaited them at the end of the road. They traveled through the lands of Babylon and across the violent terrain of the Syrian desert, guided entirely by the heavenly beacon. They carried 3 distinct treasures, highly unusual gifts for a common infant, but profoundly symbolic for the one they sought. Inside a carved wooden chest lay the purest refined gold from the mines of the East, a gift fit for a king who would rule with justice and righteousness. They also carried rare frankincense, a sweet incense used by priests in holy temples to rise up to the heavens, symbolizing that this child would be the bridge between God and man. Finally, they bore a small, dark vial of myrrh. Though it was a somber resin used to soothe pain and embalm the dead, it was brought with a deep understanding that true kingship requires ultimate sacrifice, and that the path to salvation would wind through suffering. Act 3. The Shadow of Jerusalem. After months of travel, the star led the caravan to the borders of Judea. Naturally, assuming that a king of such cosmic importance would be born in the capital city within the grand walls of a royal palace, they entered Jerusalem. But instead of joy and celebration, they found a city gripped by tension and anxiety. Ruling Judea was a man whose heart was consumed by jealousy and fear, King Herod. The atmosphere shifted from the pure desert air to a heavy, oppressive palace environment, filled with the clanking of swords and heavy golden chalices. The travelers entered the grand throne room and bowed respectfully before the ruler, explaining that they had come from distant lands because they had seen the star of the newborn king of the Jews, and they wished to worship him. Herod concealed his fury, his eyes narrowing as he gripped the armrests of his throne. He turned to his high priests and scribes, demanding to know where this Messiah was prophesied to be born. A trembling scribe opened a sacred scroll and read from the prophet Micah, "But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel." Turning back to the travelers with a forced, deceitful smile, Herod informed them that Bethlehem was a small town just a few miles south. He instructed them to search carefully for the young child, asking them to return with word of his exact location so that he, too, might come and worship him. But his heart was murderous. He saw this newborn infant as a direct threat to his throne and wanted to destroy him. Unaware of the king's dark plot, the wise travelers thanked him and departed into the night. Act 4. The light restored and the manger. As the travelers left the oppressive walls of Jerusalem, they looked up at the dark sky. For a moment, their hearts had been heavy with doubt, but then the familiar, breathtaking sight broke through the darkness. The star appeared again, moving ahead of them and guiding them away from grand palaces toward the humble hills of Bethlehem. They rejoiced with exceedingly great joy, realizing the light had not abandoned them. The star led them through the narrow, dusty streets of the village until it finally stopped. It did not hover over a mansion or a fortress, but stood directly over a simple, rustic house where animals were kept. Approaching the humble dwelling, a soft, warm golden light glowed from within. Inside, a young mother sat by a wooden manger, holding a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes, while her husband stood protectively beside them. The travelers knocked gently and stepped inside, offering wishes of peace to the house. The moment their eyes fell upon the baby, these wealthy, wise, and powerful men instantly dropped to their knees, bowing their heads to the dirt floor in front of a helpless infant. All the fatigue of the long journey, the dangers of the desert, and the doubts they had harbored vanished into nothingness. Looking at this humble child, they realized that true power does not lie in golden crowns or iron fists, but in the pure, unconditional love of God come to earth. They placed their treasures at the foot of the manger: gold for an enduring kingdom of love, frankincense for the prayers of humanity to rise to the heavens, and myrrh for the healing and sacrifice he would bring to the world. Tears filled the mother's eyes as she thanked the travelers, recognizing that the Lord had truly done great things. Act V. A different way home. That night, as the weary travelers slept in Bethlehem, their hearts full of peace, the atmosphere shifted to a dreamlike, ethereal tone. They were visited in a dream by a divine messenger. An angelic voice echoed with an urgent warning, telling them not to return to the wicked king, whose words were poison and whose heart sought the life of the child. They were instructed to return to their country by another route. The travelers woke up startled in the early morning light. Looking at one another, they knew exactly what they had to do. They packed their belongings quietly, bypassing Jerusalem entirely to take the desolate mountain paths back to the east. They also warned the young family of the falling shadow of danger before leaving. They had arrived as seekers, but they returned to their homeland as completely changed men, witnesses to the moment heaven touched earth. They came following a star in the sky, but they left with a light in their hearts that could never be extinguished. The Star of Bethlehem had fulfilled its purpose. It was not just a guide through geography, but a guide for the human heart. It remained an eternal reminder that no matter how dark the world may seem, and no matter how long and exhausting the journey of life can be, there is always a light that shines in the darkness, leading humanity to hope, peace, and salvation.